Hello everybody, today I want to talk to you about Idor, or Insecure Direct Object Reference. It's a pretty common type of bug because I keep finding it a lot, and it's no wonder why I keep finding it a lot. It's really easy to miss these kind of things, especially if you have hundreds of types of operations on your website. So today I'll be going over what an Idor actually is. There are many different types. I'll be explaining a few of them, definitely not all of them. I'll be explaining how you can look for them, and secondary insecure direct object reference, what that is, how you can find it, and again, hopefully I'll be able to bring you guys some new insights into bug bounty hunting. So let's start with what it is first. It's actually when you have an object, like for example, I'm going to use a company here. Companies can create invoices. That invoice is an object, that company is an object, and you have to have a way to identify your objects. So for example, the company needs to be identified by its identifier, and sometimes those identifiers are sequential. There are many advantages and disadvantages to using sequential identifiers versus using random long strings. Random long strings adds complexity to your system, while using sequential IDs is pretty insecure. You'll see why later on in this video. But again, not every company does rocket science. Not every company has unlimited budgets. So sequential IDs is not a security vulnerability in itself. It does make your system a little bit weaker though. We'll go over why later. So we'll look for multi-tenant systems, multi-user systems, and multi-level systems. These are not in the correct order. We'll start with multi-user systems. I'll show you why. So this is the normal behavior we expect when two different users can create documents, but they can only read their own documents. So user 1 will start to create a document, and the server will write it to the backend. It will write document ID 500 has been created by user 1. When user 1 tries to read that same document, he'll get the content, no problem, because he's the creator. However, when user 2 tries to get that document, the server will return an error. This is expected behavior because this user is not the creator of that document. Now, what would happen if the user does perform the call read document 500 and he gets the content? Well, that's an issue. That's a pretty big bug, especially if it's just a multi-user system where, for example, now you have a lot of cloud systems where a lot of users can log in, and those systems, for example, Google Documents, they don't create a separate database for every user. They have one database, and you write which user creates which document, and that's the way you can get the content of the document back, by looking in that one table that has all the documents with all the users in it. When something goes wrong and the system doesn't check if you get to read the contents of your document, that's when you can read everybody's documents. And it would be a lot safer if you didn't use sequential IDs, because you cannot guess random long strings. This is pretty easy. If I create a new document and I get document ID 500, I can easily guess the document 499 will also exist. The same goes for 498. So if the check doesn't exist to make sure that I am the creator of the document, or that I have read rights at least, I can read every single document and I can easily enumerate all of them. When we move over to multi-tenant systems, so for example company A and company B, documents can be created and only read again by the creating company, so everybody in the same company can read the document. If company A creates document 500, company B cannot read document 500. That's the way it's supposed to happen. Now, what happens if company B can read that document's content? Then we have a huge issue, because that would enable intra-company spying. Especially, again, I'm going to refer to Google. If you have, Google has a system in place to register a company instead of a person. So when you register your company at Google and you can read other companies' data, you can start spying on them. That's a huge issue. So that would be pretty much high. We call that vertical privilege escalation. It means that a user gets to go to a different company. Sorry, this is horizontal privilege escalation. Multi-tenant horizontal privilege escalation. Somebody on the same level can read a document from another user that is not supposed to be able to read. There are also other levels, for example, an administrator versus an account that has no rights to read something, so an employee versus an administrator. We'll get to that later. Actually, we'll get to that now. For example, when you have one company, I'm going to take Microsoft here as an example. Microsoft has an HR department, and HR can read all the documents on this system. They can also write, they have all the rights that they need. So they start reading document 400, should be document 500 here, I'm sorry. They read it, they get the contents, everything's okay, no problem. Then the consultants come along, and the consultants can only write the documents. So for example, consultant user 1 creates document 500 and the file just gets stored and nothing's the matter, everything works. This is how we expect it. Now, when we try to read from document 500, so we call just the same function that the HR would call, we try to read from those documents, we get an error back as a consultant because we don't have the right to do that. We can only write documents and no reading. We get an error if we try to read the document from the content. Sorry, I made a mistake here. This is probably confusing. What I meant to say here is that just simply the consultants can read all the documents, HR can write all the documents. Now, when we can read the content of a document as the HR consultants, we do have a problem. That's not supposed to happen, then you got a bug again, and maybe even bounty. Let's hope so for you. All of this is pretty good and well, but how do you look for these? Sometimes it can be pretty simple. The first thing I do is check the JavaScript. Now, I just open the website in my browser and I open the console. The JavaScript console, the developer console for Chrome, for example. I usually use Chrome because it has the best autocomplete function there is. And I just start typing random words like get, save, all that kind of stuff. And it will start suggesting me functions, JavaScript functions that I can call. Now, if you just type the name of the JavaScript function, it will print out the contents of that function. That is very useful because then you can read what it does. But what's even more useful is if you type the name of the function and you type an opening bracket and a closing bracket, you can actually call that function, including all the parameters between the brackets. So for example, if there's a JavaScript function, create document, you can just call that from your development console and it will start creating the documents for you. Same for read document. So I tried to do all of those things, and then usually, for example, if I want to read a document, I will have to know which document, so it will ask for my identifier. I will type read document, opening bracket 100, closing bracket, and it will start reading document 100. It's as simple as that. So I try to do that with random identifiers. So for example, if I create a document and it has the identifier 100, I start reading document 99 or 98 or 97. You just start going down, going back, and enumerating all the possibilities. Now, one thing I have to tell you, you're never allowed to do this with an unknown identifier in a production environment, especially not when you're editing or deleting something or creating something in a different account that's not yours. This is very bad because you could read GDPR data, you could read bill data, and you can still get sued. Some things, you know, every single bug bounty program is probably guarded by some safe harbor stuff, but some things these companies can't protect you against. If you actually steal people's personal data, that's not good. I'm giving you this warning. always make 2 accounts and read from each other. Never read from random people in a production environment. You can also, for example, if there's a link on the page that you get sent to, you can just replace the get parameter in that link, or you can place a web proxy between the web browser and the server, and you can replace post parameters before sending the request to the server. Those are all ways to start messing with IDs and Idor. Let your imagination run free. I hope this gave you a basic idea of what Idor is, because now we're going to move on to something more advanced, secondary Idor. So first I'm going to explain the normal situation. User 1 wants to read the invoice 500 and he requests that to his browser. Now the browser, when the user 1 clicks the button get invoice, the browser actually makes 2 calls to the server. First he has to get the metadata for the invoice. That includes like the name of the invoice, the amount, where to send it to, all that kind of stuff. And when it has that, it needs to get all the products. So for invoice ID 500, it will get product 1 and product 2. Simple as that. That's how it's supposed to work. When user 2 gets invoice 500, it doesn't work. He cannot get the products, he cannot get the metadata, everything is protected well. However, an issue arises when, for example, the metadata gets guarded well, but the product fetching does not. So in this instance, when the user will click the button get invoice 500, the web server will start up the calls and it will get an error on the get metadata wall. This will result in an error in the front end, and the user will never see the product data even though it is requested. Now, problems start to arise when the user makes a direct API call to the server and he just says, get me the products for invoice 500. Because this product call is not properly guarded, the user can get those details. He can never get the full invoice metadata, but that's not really an issue here because he can still get products. So he can still form some kind of ID, and again, he can do stuff he's not supposed to do. So again, make a bug. I'm going to repeat this one more time. Do not do this with random identifiers in production. Always make sure you have at least 2 accounts and start messing with those 2 accounts. That's the last thing. I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope this was useful. Thank you.